We have started to record the next to last session of SPCH 1113, Introduction to Public Speaking, for the first summer session. The 19 sessions go by very quickly. It is Wednesday, June 28th, 2023. At this point in the term, the big thing for me is to make certain that I am in contact with all of you, whether it is through my SAU email address on the syllabus, or whether it's through my Yahoo email address on the syllabus. There are a couple of you who have communicated through Blackboard, and I wanted to indicate one person today sent me a message on Blackboard, but the contents were left blank. So most of the time, if you need to contact me about a presentation, whether or not I received it, whether or not I can see and hear it, whether or not you had an issue with your job, whether or not there is something going on with your internet connection, it happens to me, it can happen to you too, please make certain that you let me know before or during class today or tomorrow. Most of the time, as I told you yesterday, Blackboard is available to students in the fall, the spring, the summer, at least 24 hours after our last class period. So realistically, you should have access to Blackboard until at least Friday night until 11:59. I can't guarantee that once we get into the month of July, you'll have access to everything. And then there's something else. You can always go to the Grade Center on Blackboard and check your progress. Semester grades or first summer session grades, in this case, are usually due on Monday after the last class session. So for all of you, double check to make certain that you have sent me everything, and if there is an emergency, let me know. Don't contact me sometime next week, because by then it is too late. Keep in mind that students must be proactive. It is your responsibility to get everything done on time in an online course. It's not my responsibility to send you an email and say, please send me something. We have gone into incredible amounts of detail with all of the course videos on where you send material, how you can access information, and most importantly, content, delivery, and visuals data has been available in great depth throughout the past 17 sessions, with today being 18, tomorrow being 19. We're going to look at self-evaluation speech critique data. We're going to go into Blackboard itself in the student preview mode, and we have our first day of persuasive speeches coming up. I should say wildcard presentations. But let's first of all go to what we were examining yesterday. This is Class Collaborate Ultra, what we were looking at during our wildcard speech topic selection session. We'll pick it up from here with the beginning of a number of presentations that we were examining for research. Because this is recorded off of a smartphone, the audio level is not going to be as great, as you know, from a webcam. Closed captioning is on. This was his wildcard speech from the fall semester of 2020, Matt Huffman, on Wildcat football in Arkansas. Here we go.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Matt Huffman. Tonight I'm doing my wildcard speech on a behind-the-scenes look live stream edition. Myself and another gentleman that I teamed up with, we do the live streaming for our local high school. So tonight I'm going to be giving you a rundown of everything that we use and how we put it together. And then at the end, close to the end of the speech, I will be showing a few clips of how everything looks when it's all together. But
in general, and going through why they're bad, what conditions accompany these situations, and then circling back around to what we need to do to stop them. So what is a puppy mill? A puppy mill is a commercial breeding facility that is mostly for your purebred dogs that emphasizes on quality or on quantity, not quality, which means that they're trying to push as many puppies out as possible to gain the most amount of profits.
Social media. I believe that social media makes people focus more on others. To back this up, when people are using social media excessively, they tend to focus more on others' accomplishments than their own. People seem to focus on how successful others are and tend to compare others' lives with their own. What social media users rarely realize is that the lifestyle showcased on social media by their friends and peers is rarely a steady reflection of what's actually going on in their lives. Those are only the highlights of their best moments. And even if those are their best moments,
based on what you believe or what you feel is a sport or what is not a sport. Don't let me tell you what is or what is not. But I'm going to explain myself on why I feel the way that I feel about certain sports. And I just hope that you will hear me out. And yeah. So I'm going to start off right off the bat giving you my opinion on what is a sport and what is not a sport. So some sports include basketball, baseball, track, football, all of that sorts of stuff, and then non-sports. So this includes cheerleading, e-gaming, and gymnastics, which
Well lit, very confident persona style. The timer is in a place where she can notice very easily. Because this was during a semester, if you've got a free Loom subscription,
on the scholarship applications that mentioned that I wanted to be a pre-vet major so that they would know that I wanted to go into that career. Because if you say that you haven't been to a clinic, shadowed at a clinic or anything, they'll go, maybe we don't want to give her money because she might not actually want to do that. And they'll be on the edge of not wanting to. But if they know that you have had experience, they're going to be like, oh, she knows what she's getting into. Let's give her money to support her.
Is basically working out gives you the same high that an opioid would give you, but you're not taking a drug. And so everyone's usually super friendly, super just like happy on a high as they're in the gym. So you get to work with really friendly people all the time. And they're super happy, super nice, and everything like that. The only thing is there are unfriendly people in the gym sometimes. Obviously, working in customer service, you are going to come across some people who are not very nice. For the most part, those people that are friendly make the whole experience worth it.
Top role-playing game. This means that all of your stats, so to call them, are usually listed on a piece of paper. And all the decisions you end up making, the determining factor of them will be the roll of a dice, a d20 or a 20-sided die. Now, D&D itself was published in 1974 by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, and it was notable because it deviated from its previous war game style tabletop role-playing games that were
the self-evaluation speech critique. So it will be very interesting over the next couple of days to see, as you have with all of these examples from the past few years, how you have improved in terms of research, organization, delivery, visuals, and telling a story that's going to help you remain, as I always say, extemporaneous and conversational. If you need to contact me, make certain that you do it through my SAU or Yahoo email accounts, because I am not in my office physically in Overstreet Hall during the first summer session. As for SPCH 1113, Introduction to Public Speaking, during the first summer session of 2023, that concludes the recording session for today. For each of the presentations in this class, demonstrative, informative, persuasive, wildcard, I have showed number of materials that are going to help you along the way to prepare, particularly speeches sometimes outline structure, but what works best for you? And with that in mind, I want to go to the student preview mode of Blackboard next before showing you an example of a self-evaluation speech critique from one of your peers. We'll put this on the screen. And let this sink in for just I update this daily. So when you click on homepage announcements, it's always going to be available for you to see, like this, in blue, in case there are any issues that you have. You can always join us live either today or tomorrow. It's not a requirement, but as you know, I can access the Grade Center and check for all of you to see when you are online in Blackboard, watching course videos, or checking data available at this location. Tools is going to be very essential for all of you. At Class Collaborate Ultra, I would always go through at the menu, at recordings, and you know me, I do this all the time. Repetition matters. Not everyone is going to have perfect internet access 24/7, so I feel it's my responsibility to talk about this on a regular basis. On these two panels, the second panel has class sessions 1 through 7 as of today. The first panel has class sessions 8 through 17. Double check some of these class sessions, and if you're wondering why he didn't talk about, Professor Reppert that is, discuss my presentation, more than likely it's because I didn't receive it. I always double and triple check my email addresses before a class to make certain that I have everything set on either day 1 or day 2. On the right-hand side, you can watch everything in real time. Look at all of our durations. Other than one day last week here when my internet went out, I try to be as detailed as possible in giving you as much information necessary for overall success. Also at tools, at least for the time being, you can check at my grades where you stand with demonstrative, informative, and persuasive grades. There's no guarantee that whenever all of you lose access to Blackboard, that before that time I will have posted wildcard grades. I usually don't do it that way. Most of you, though, who have completed all of your assignments and on time are doing fine. Those of you who have fallen behind, you need to make certain that you get in contact with me. That's your responsibility. At the course syllabus itself, let's move on and take a look at the self-evaluation speech critique. I'll come back to this later on at the end of class. The supplemental information area of the syllabus. We talked about this yesterday with the self-evaluation speech critique 10 points. Due Thursday, June 29. I'm a little flexible on that. If you give it to me Friday or Saturday, that's okay. A realistic appraisal of personal improvement during the course, content, delivery, and visuals. As I indicated, I will come back to Blackboard before we get into day 1 of wildcard speeches. I want to show you an example of what one of your classmates has produced in terms of a self-evaluation speech critique. This is from Abriana. Here's what she has to say. Quote, "Before starting this course, I was confident in my public speaking skills. However, during the course, I improved my speech preparation and execution. Usually, I get anxious and my hands shake uncontrollably before addressing an audience. but this course made it easy for me to deliver my speeches without feeling anxious. In my first speech, I did too much with visuals, which made it take an hour to prepare one slide. For the rest of my speeches, I focused more on my words than on videos. I selected topics relevant to pop culture and uniquely me, making it easier for everyone to relate. I enjoyed the topics I chose, and overall, my public speaking has improved a lot over the past 4 weeks. Without feeling anxious, I feel like I did a really good job. And I would agree with Aubriana on that. The only piece of friendly, constructive criticism I would give her is that I wished that in terms of time, her persuasive speech last week was a little bit longer. It did not affect her grade. In all of your cases, you want to send to me the best overall take. Over the past few class periods, I've shared a number of these with you. Yesterday, I went back to fall 2020. I've done previous class sessions discussing these. A representative sample from Aubriana of what you might want to do. First person, you can send it to me as a traditional email, or in this case, it was sent to me, and I will show you. It was sent to me as an email, self-evaluation, and then I just opened it up like that. But she sent it to me as a PDF. However you want to do it is totally up to you. Let's return to the student preview mode of Blackboard and remind you of a couple of other items before we officially begin. The 100 points obviously adds up quickly. Demonstrative, informative, persuasive, wild card, 20 points. The self-evaluation speech critique, of course, is an easy 10 for most of you. And class participation, coming online, accessing data, watching the videos, is also worth 10 points for a maximum of 100. At this location, you can click on my website, you can go to Twitter, or to my Yahoo address. Our itinerary to wrap up the first summer session June 28, today is wildcard speech day 1. Tomorrow, June 29, is wildcard speech day 2, the official last day of the first summer session. And then also at course syllabus, the speech schedule. Some of you have always been going on day 1. That's not really a problem. I'll leave that on the screen for just a moment because there are a couple of you who have accessed videos or been on Blackboard, but have fallen behind in sending me projects. Keep in mind, you want to make certain that you stay on track of everything week by week. As I indicated at the outset, contact me at either of my email addresses so there's no misunderstanding or confusion about what is required from all of you regarding course projects or assignments. And then, of course, the final item with the checklist, the SAU speech critique, an informal look for all of you with those 7 areas of content: research, thorough; organization, logical; introduction, relevant; main supporting points, apparent; conclusion, compelling; fairness, inclusive; analysis, thoughtful; delivery, extemporaneous, quality, continuous; conversational style, expressive; eye contact, full; articulation, enunciation, clear; vocal variety, varied; nonverbal cues, poised; persona, authentic. When it comes to your visuals, design, uniform; font, color shading, readable; spelling, grammar, accurate; text, image balance, comparable; interactivity, recurrent; storytelling, dynamic; aesthetics, engaging. And I should mention, when you're looking at delivery, persona, being authentic, also comes with an online course. Your overall presence as a communicator, that's going to be absolutely key no matter if you're a communication major or not. It really all does matter. Just being able to talk in such a way where you are confident, you're smooth, you're likable, you're knowledgeable, and that authentic persona does come in handy, which is why when you learn how to speak in an extemporaneous fashion and not reading directly off the screen, it helps you so much in your everyday life. Which brings us to our first presenter of the day for Wildcard Speech Day 1. Abriana is going to start off the day. Her presentation is called The Evolution of The Sims 4. And I should mention before I put hers on the screen for you to watch, if you are sending me data today during the 1 to 3 window when we record, or tomorrow, I will try to get those in and play them during class. But most importantly, don't fall behind. And second, most importantly, please make certain that you contact me if you have any kind of an issue. Here is Abriana, and our first wildcard speech of day 1 is The Evolution of The Sims 4. Here we go.
Hello, I'm Abriana, and for my final presentation, I will be talking about a game that I hold near and dear to my heart, The Sims 4. The Sims 4 came out in 2014, but the Sims franchise as a whole has been running for about 23 years now. Starting in 2000, so this game came in with the new decade. When it first started out, the Sims didn't look so hot. They looked like potato people. This is according to other people that I've talked to that played The Sims. They say they look like potato people. But as The Sims has grown, the art style changed and a lot of the animation got more fluid. So it's really developed as a franchise, and it's been really cool to see because you go back to The Sims 1, the animation wasn't that good. The open world didn't look as detailed as it should have. Well, it looked detailed for the time. But as it's developed, and in The Sims 4, when it first came out, it wasn't really anything. There were about 3 playable houses, there were 2 neighborhoods, there wasn't much to do. This was all until 2015 when the first expansion pack came out. Now, the expansion pack, all it did was add 1 new neighborhood and a few game mechanics. These game mechanics being you could go to work with your Sims. Now, your Sims can already have a job, but you can't really go with them and see what they're doing. With Get to Work, you can. And the newest game pack that's coming out next month on the 20th, I believe, is going to include horses and stables and just all the stuff that comes with that. And this expansion pack is going to be styled after the Midwest in Arizona, mostly. But with expansion packs, they really take the time to try to detail a culture, like for a specific culture. Like in the expansion pack Snowy Escapes, they focus on Japanese culture and they do a really nice job on being very respectful when it comes to incorporating cultures into the game. Now, there are more than just expansion packs. There are actually 3 types of LLC that comes with The Sims, this being kits, stuff packs, and expansion packs. Now, stuff packs come with a few items here and there, but mostly are for gameplay. The kits, though, the kits are either just stuff or just clothing. You're not getting much else from the kits except for stuff and clothing. And this has been a real problem in the Sims community because they are so expensive and people want just a little bit more. They want a little bit more bang for their buck when it comes to the LLC, and they feel like they're not getting that. But I'll talk about that more later. And by later, I mean in the next slide. Now, The Sims has its problems, of course, like any game does, but with how big the franchise is and how much money it makes, a lot of people have really harsh criticism, but also have really a lot that is good to say about this game, because how could you not? But the main thing is the bugs, the modders, and the storyline. A lot of people don't like the fact that The Sims 4 takes place in an alternate universe, really just negating all of the previous games. But This is really a back and forth argument between the entire community, whether the Sims should be a part of it or shouldn't. A lot of people are really divided on that. And the bugs can get scary. The best example I can think of is the My Wedding Story pack. When that pack came out, nothing worked like it was supposed to. It took about 3 patches, and these are updates that come after the expansion pack comes out. But it took 3 patches for the game to actually work like it was supposed to. And people were very upset about that because expansion packs can be upwards of $40 when they first come out. And if you don't get them when they are $40, if you don't get them, and people are expecting just a lot more from the expansion pack and don't want bugs in their game. But a very good pro is how customizable the Sims are. Like you can make them any ethnicity, any religion. There's really no bounds to what you can do with your Sims. And overall, it's an amazing game. It's a game that has so much potential. You can build any kind of house you want. You can do anything you want. If you want a mermaid to fight a vampire, that can happen. If you want your werewolf to go and live on the beach for a couple weeks, you can do that with The Sims. The Sims is a sandbox game, which is a good and bad thing. It's a good thing because it lets you and allows you to build any kind of story you want. It's all based on your imagination. And that's the limit of The Sims. And that's one thing I love about The Sims. It has its problems, yes. And this is more of a company problem that they need to fix that. But the game overall is pretty all right.
As we have been doing quite extensively over the past couple of weeks, not only with you, but for individuals who have given presentations in past years in this course. Let's look at the final 90 seconds of her speech. From this point, closed captioning to do 2 things. Check her complete sentence structure. Ideally, not a lot of issues with grammar, vocalics, or drop Gs. After all of our presenters are done today and tomorrow, we'll go from back to front and examine the design consistency of all of the slides, including the location of the webcam, eye contact, hand gestures, lighting. Hopefully, with Abriana and everyone else, the 4th and final presentation is that capstone that is going to be a nice conclusion to the course, wrapping up your improvement in all of the areas we've been discussing during the first summer session.
And these are updates that come after the expansion pack comes out. But it took 3 patches for the game to actually work like it was supposed to. And people were very upset about that because expansion packs can be upwards of $40 when they first come out. And if you don't get them when they are $40, if you don't get them, and people are expecting just a lot more from the expansion pack and don't want bugs in their game. But a very good pro is how customizable the Sims are. Like you can make them any ethnicity, any religion. There's really no bounds to what you can do with your Sims. And overall, it's an amazing game. It's a game that has so much potential. You can build any kind of house you want. You can do anything you want. If you want a mermaid to fight a vampire, that can happen. If you want your werewolf to go and live on the beach for a couple weeks, you can do that with The Sims. The Sims is a sandbox game, which is a good and bad thing. It's a good thing because it lets you and allows you to build any kind of story you want. It's all based on your imagination. And that's the limit of The Sims. And that's one thing I love about The Sims. It has its problems, yes. And this is more of a company problem that they need to fix that. But the game overall is pretty all right.
I suppose the only thing I would probably do there, if I'm really nitpicky, is have some type unofficial conclusion, even though you can tell she has closed her mouth. She's right at the end of her presentation. Sometimes with all of your takes, you'll remember to do it. Sometimes you won't. think about her overall presence, her overall stylistic approach with her eye contact, the way that she approaches the camera in a likable style, not really nervous or self-conscious at all. Elements that were discussed earlier when we showed her self-evaluation speech critique. When we examine her slides from back to front, there's nothing that calls attention to itself in terms of being sloppy. Consistency with the color, the font style, and the font size for her headlines. Not a lot of verbiage for her bullet points, which is good because that will make you extemporaneous, as are all of these images. So technically, she has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different items on that slide that she can discuss with as much depth that she would deem appropriate. And then as we scroll back, we'll take the closed captioning off for the time being. As we scroll back with criticism and praise, very expressive with her hands. I don't talk about that a lot, as you're well aware. What is natural for you? You just don't want to overdo it and look like you should be working at an airport on a tarmac bringing in a plane, because then it gets to be a little bit too much. Her style with any type of hand gesture is appropriate. Here again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different visuals on that slide, or 10 different items to discuss. Her enthusiasm for the topic is quite appropriate. She gives herself enough room on the webcam, upper right-hand side of the screen, to move around. Some people will be tighter, but what works for you is most appropriate. The fit kit, the horse ranch, the first pet, all of that she explains in great detail. The expansion pack from 2015, the newest comes out next month. That enthusiasm is quite appropriate and obvious. How she is loading in, let me move that so she has her eyes open. There you go. Again, with all of this data, extremely knowledgeable, loading in with part of a bigger franchise. 2014, first came out in 2000. Those of you who are fans of this, you can identify with this very well. I should mention something else. Not only does she have a nice location for her webcam, upper right-hand portion of the screen, but when you're presenting, you always want to consider what is going to be most beneficial for you in terms of eye contact, where you can locate the timer. You can go backwards from 5 minutes, or in this case, go upwards from 0. Because our class does not go beyond 30 days. You don't have to worry about the 30-day subscription on Loom expiring during a fall or spring semester. Most students have this backwards, as you know, because without a paid subscription, you can only go 5 minutes. During a summer session or a fall intersession, that's not the case. That brings us, good eye contact, now to her title slide. No issues with lighting. A lot of, I wish she had her name on the slide, but that's a small thing. If I put this on my YouTube channel, the title really is the only thing that matters. But The Sims 4, all of these visuals give her credibility as a speaker. Her knowledge of the topic, the way in which she approaches it, gives her credibility as a speaker. Now, one more thing that we will do during the last week is put the closed captioning on with the audio down and examine a little bit of her eye contact. She's still speaking in complete sentences. All of you need to do this. Do you have the appearance of being a confident speaker? The persona, the presence, and even though that's not listed on the SAU speech critique, I might try to squeeze that in sometime in the future. No real breaks of thought, and comes across as relatively smooth all the way through. We'll go back to our title slide. So that is our first presentation of the day from Abriana. I had also mentioned at the outset that for some of you who are watching this live within the window of 1 to 3 o'clock, if you decide to send me something during class, I'll go ahead and play it because I just received something. We have Autumn as our next presenter. This is hers. She is looking at life as an esthetician. And here we go.
Hi, my name is Autumn Green, and today I'm doing my speech on life as an esthetician. What is an esthetician? An esthetician is a skin care therapist, spa technician, and facial specialist who helps in cleaning, beautifying, and maintaining the skin and face. Estheticians provide waxes, facials, body treatments, and makeup applications, as well as lessons. What does an esthetician do? Estheticians evaluate a client's skin condition and skin type to offer the most helpful treatments and services. They also sanitize all products before and after using them on a client. Estheticians also maintain a relaxing and clean environment, and they also give clients product recommendations for cosmetics and skincare. Estheticians communicate with clients on scheduling their appointments as well. Down here, I have different services or what estheticians do, but we'll go over that in the next slide, in a different slide, I'm sorry. Now we have esthetician versus esthetician. Both of them are pronounced the same. Estheticians focus on cosmetics and treatments, and the other estheticians with the A are more medical. They're more on the medical side. A medical esthetician can provide medical level skincare treatments. They have the same training as a regular esthetician, but with additional advanced training. Estheticians perform medical skin procedures, while estheticians perform cosmetic and cleaning procedures. And I have a little picture up here just showing the different estheticians. The medical esthetician, they're more like medical backgrounds, such as like doctors or nurses or something, but they have their medical degree in doing people's face. Or basically, I would say dermatologist, but this is more relaxing, if that makes sense. How to become an esthetician in Arkansas. Step 1, complete a program in aesthetics. Step 2, complete and submit an exam application. Step 3, take and pass the esthetician practical examination. Step 4, take and pass the esthetician written examination. And step 5, explore career opportunities in Arkansas and keep your license current. The salary of an esthetician. For medical estheticians, they make more than spa estheticians on average. For example, a medical esthetician with 20 plus years averages $57,000 a year compared to a spa esthetician with the same number of years. They make about $35,000 a year. What factors affect the pay of an esthetician? Number 1 is the experience that you have. Your level of experience as an esthetician can affect your salary, especially if you're just beginning your career. The more experience and certifications you have, the more likely they're more likely to get paid. Number 2, location. In Magnolia, it's going to be very hard to do your dream as an esthetician, so you need to move somewhere bigger. When you're physically located, can also have an impact on your salary. As an esthetician, larger cities tend to have more spas due to higher demand for recreation and wellness, but smaller cities have less competition, and higher customer loyalty. Number 3 would be clientele. The demographics of your clientele can also have a large impact on your pay as an esthetician. So a couple months ago, I had the chance to job shadow an esthetician, and it was a really good experience. I got the chance to do not actually do the lashes, but just go hand by hand on how to do lashes on like a mannequin, not on a client. On a mannequin, I helped the esthetician I was working with all her appointments, and it was just all good. I had fun with the customers. I made sure they were comfortable, and it was just a really good experience. So I want to have my own business one day and being an esthetician. The job shadow experience helped me realize that I either want to do this part, being an esthetician, I don't want to do this part. So it was just a really good experience, and I got to learn a lot. So thank you for watching my wildcard speech on life as an esthetician. And I really love this topic because it is my dream job. And I only picked this because a couple years ago I realized I love skin care. I love skin and beauty. So this is what I realized I want to do. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new.
As we were doing previously with our first speaker, Abriana, now let's examine Autumn's overall improvement, especially in delivery, eye contact, and complete sentence structure in the final 90 seconds of her presentation. And I always make it 90 seconds because you want to wrap up the presentation in such a way that is not only going to reinforce your thesis, but we can get a real feel with closed captioning on your command, your overall stylistic approach, and that improvement is going to show. Here it is.
And higher customer loyalty. Number 3 would be clientele. The demographics of your clientele can also have a large impact on your pay as an esthetician. So a couple months ago, I had the chance to job shadow an esthetician, and it was a really good experience. I got the chance to do not actually do the lashes, but just go hand by hand on how to do lashes on like a mannequin, not on a client. On a mannequin, I helped the esthetician I was working with all her appointments, and it was just all good. I had fun with the customers. I made sure they were comfortable, and it was just a really good experience. So I want to have my own business one day and being an esthetician. The job shadow experience helped me realize that I either want to do this part, being an esthetician, I don't want to do this part. So it was just a really good experience, and I got to learn a lot. So thank you for watching my wildcard speech on life as an esthetician. And I really love this topic because it is my dream job. And I only picked this because a couple years ago I realized I love skin care. I love skin and beauty. So this is what I realized I want to do. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new.
As you know, occasionally the audio on Class Collaborate Ultra during a live session is not as high as I would like it to be. Usually when we go back and play the recorded sessions, it has been bumped up a little bit. For us watching it live, her audio is a little bit challenging because she's not opening up her mouth and projecting as much as I would like. Not going to have a bearing on her grade. I like the topic. I thought she approached it quite well. The one thing, obviously, that is distracting, the movement of the webcam during a presentation. You shouldn't be doing that. Autumn, look at my cursor. You've got this enormous area in the upper right-hand portion of the screen that is crying out for you to just place it right there instead of moving back and forth. It won't affect your grade this time. But if you wind up taking any courses from me in the future, like advanced public speaking next spring at SAU, That would be something, obviously, if we have an online assignment, that would be an issue because you don't want to move that during a speech. It gets to be distracting, especially when you've got this dead spot right here that is crying out for the webcam just to go there, and you can make it a little bit bigger like Abriana. That being said, let's take a look at her storytelling ability with the consistency of font size, style, design, that type of thing. What you're looking at is a common platform template that you can use on Microsoft PowerPoint, and she does it quite well. Clean look to all of her slides, in particular with closed captioning off now. One of the most relevant parts of her outline is the enthusiasm that she provides when she is discussing job shadowing and how that now is something that is a dream job. She described this quite well. And getting into the definitions early on, the esthetician with an A versus the one with an E, I thought she explained that also in an excellent fashion. This is what I'm talking about. You should never be moving this back and forth. It gets to be like a ping pong game. What factors affect the pay of an esthetician? That's really helpful because many of us would have no idea. There are some of the salaries, the averages, the esthetician with an E versus the one with the A. One is medical, and then the other is cosmetic and cleaning. And it's not unusual where, especially in Magnolia or any other location, you'll find a lot of estheticians with an E as part of an operation. Eye contact, confidence, obviously, really, really improved. What does an esthetician do? Again, as we saw with Aubriana, a nice blend of bullet points and images with her title slide. Our third wild card speech of the day is from Ms. Henderson, and her topic is Dennis Rader, and here it is.
Hi, my name is Zari Henderson, and today I will be giving my wildcard speech for Speech 1113, First Summer Session 2023, 1 p.m. over Dennis Rader. Dennis Lynn Rader is an American serial killer known as the BTK killer because he was known to have killed 10 people in Wichita and Park City, Kansas. He was born March 9, 1945 in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Claimed that as a youth, he had killed animals and developed violent sexual fantasies that involved bondage. He served in the U.S. Air Force in the 1960s, and in the 1970s, he returned home where he married and had 2 children. In 1979, he graduated Wichita State University, where he studied criminal justice. During this time, he also was working for ADT, and in 1991, he became a compliance officer in Park City, all while being highly active in church and serving as a Boy Scout leader. January 15, 1974, he committed his first murders. He strangled 4 family members, including 2 children, in their home in Wichita. Semen had been found at the scene, even though no one had been sexually assaulted. In April, he murdered a 21-year-old woman. He broke into her home and first shot her brother, even though he survived, and then stabbed her to death. Later that year, he wrote a detailed letter about the January murders that he committed, saying that the codes for him would be bind them, torture them, kill them, BTK. And that's how he got his name, BTK Killer. He left a note in a book in the Wichita Public Library stating this, and it was eventually recovered by the police. Over the next 2 decades, Rader killed 5 more women. His 6th victim was strangled in March 1977 after he locked her 3 young children in a bathroom. Rader began to grow irritation by the lack of social media coverage and wrote a letter to the local TV station. How many people do I have to kill before I get a name in the paper or some national attention? After that alarm, he then waited 8 years before killing his neighbor in her home, then taking the body to take pictures in his church showing the bondage that he had did. A 28-year-old mother of two was killed in 1986, and his last murder was convicted in 1991, where he strangled a 62-year-old woman in her secluded home. In 2004, on the 30th anniversary of Radar's first murder, a local paper ran a feature in which it speculated about the killer had either died or been imprisoned. Radar responded by sending various evidence from his ninth murder, including a copy of her driver's license and photos of her body. January 2005, police were able to get their big break on Radar after he left his final note in a cereal box asking could they track a floppy disk. Police then responded back telling them that it was completely safe for him to do so, in which he did. His DNA was matched to the semen left at his first murder crime scene, and he was arrested in 2005, where he soon confessed about his murders and was being shocked about the fact that the police had tricked him. In June, Radar pled guilty, and 2 months later, he was sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences. And here in this last slide, I have pictures of all the people that he had killed over his time. As you can see, the whole Orterio family being some of his victims. I think that this was a really interesting speech to do, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Thank you.
If you're watching this later on via Class Collaborate Ultra, you know that I actually played this presentation twice. Somewhere in the transmission, it froze. So I decided to play her speech again from the beginning. Let's take a look at her slide structure. The victims, how he strikes again, the first murder, the upbringing, and then how something like this can really just negatively impact individuals' lives and communities. Now, the one thing you'll want to make certain of is double check the spelling to make certain that you have his last name right, because here it is Rader and here it is Radar, which would make someone who is watching this want to know, well, what exactly is the spelling? Is it Rader or Radar? So whenever you're going through any of this, just double check the spelling, double check everything to make certain that your design consistency, as she has here with all of the victims, the storytelling comes across quite well, because with the fewer amount of words, with all of these particular images, it's going to help her remain extemporaneous and conversational. Now let me do this. I'll refresh it in the window because SharePoint is a little bit more challenging to deal with. We'll go slideshow from beginning and check out her first 90 seconds for her
Hi, my name
overall
is Zari Henderson,
extemporaneous
and
style.
today I will be giving my wildcard speech for Speech 1113, first summer session 2023, 1 p.m. over Dennis Radar. Dennis Lynn Radar is an American serial killer known as the BTK killer because he was known to have killed 10 people in Wichita and Park City, Kansas. He was born March 9, 1945 in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Claimed that as a youth, he had killed animals and developed violent sexual fantasies that involved bondage. He served in the U.S. Air Force in the 1960s, and in the 1970s, he returned home where he married and had 2 children. In 1979, he grew.
Now we'll go ahead and pause it, and I want to show you something before we move on to our next speaker. If you're ever uncertain about spelling or double check for the consistency, in this case, with the spelling, that's where Google can help you out a lot, because this is what I just did in real time. Checking out the spelling of his name, Rader, and according to this, he is now 78 years of age. And if I wanted to check anything in the news feed on Google about him or anything else, you can see that there is still information about him available, which she could have utilized if she had wanted. She did use that photo for one of her slides. Whenever you're looking at a wild card topic, as we have with 3 so far, the nice part is not only the uniqueness, but all different kinds of ways that you can tell the story. Our last speaker primarily told the story, as you can see, through photos with minimal text, and that certainly works. Our next presenter today has not officially been included in our course videos because she was sending her speeches to the wrong address. So let me go ahead and play for the record 2 of her speeches. First, demonstrative, and I'll put that on the screen. This is Ms. Hall. She's using a format that is quite similar to Chloe. Her demonstrative speech, which I will unmute and go full screen whenever she begins, is called How to Press Flowers. If any of you are also in that circumstance where something came up, I'm very ecumenical about this. Get me the material as soon as possible, because when you are in an online course, sometimes things happen. But this is her demonstrative speech, thankfully sent now to the correct address, How to Press Flowers, and here it is.
My demonstrative speech, I will be doing how to press flowers. So the first step on how to press flowers is to go outside and decide which flower to pick. If you're picking from a smaller flower, I would suggest you pick about 3 to 5 of them so that you can have a bunch of the little tiny flowers. If you're picking flowers like in the photo, I would suggest you get about 1 to 2. And then if you're picking anything from a branch that has a main taproot like a tree, so walnuts, pecans, acorns, I suggest those go in a brown paper bag, and that you try not to press them, and even fruits, because they take a very long time for them to dry out if you're just using this pressing method that I'm showing you today. The second step would be to dig up the flower out of the ground and collect the flower. So for this step, you want to make sure that you're wearing gloves and that you are completely getting the whole flower out of the ground. So if it has like a bulb or taproot, you want to make sure that you have a tiny shovel and that you're digging all of it up, especially if you're using this for like a plant collection or it's going into a herbarium. If it has more of those like fibrous roots, you want to make sure that you're getting all those tiny roots out of the ground. And if you're picking from a tree or a bush, you definitely want to make sure you're wearing gloves, because it could be a rose bush or a rose tree. And you don't want to stab yourself from the prickles on the rose bush or tree. So definitely make sure when you do this, you're wearing gloves, and also you don't want to, get any like latex or anything on your hands or anything like that if you're allergic. So gloves are really important during this second step of collecting flowers. The third step is to clean the flower off from all the dirt that you got it from, if you got it out of the ground, and then place the flower on a hard surface and then on some newspaper. And then you're going to put another sheet of newspaper on top of the flower and then place another hard surface on top of the flower. So for this step, you don't have to necessarily use newspaper, because you can see in the picture she's using just plain, looks like printer paper. You can also use notebook paper, anything that can basically absorb the moisture from the flowers, because that's the whole point of this drying process, is to make sure that the flowers are completely dried out. And then the cardboard and the hard surfaces that you put it on doesn't have to be cardboard. It could be a book. You can use that. They're just to make sure that you have enough pressure on the flower so that it can dry out. And when placing your flowers on top of the newspaper or printer paper, I suggest you take the time to really just spread them out, make them look very nice, because once you put the other hard surface on top of it, it's kind of like solidified. So you want to make sure that it's the design you like and it looks the way that you want it to look before you move on to the next step. And the fourth step is basically to find something to bind these two hard surfaces together and wait for the flour to completely dry. So if you're using just a regular flour press, you would usually have a cloth terry straps that will hold this in place, and it's for a lot of flours. But if you're using a book, you can just place more books on top of each other to get that binding effect. And then in this picture, they're using a little twisted screw method, which it's really interesting. So either one will work, just making sure that your flours are completely dry is the main point of this, because they will get moldy if they are not, and they will probably stay wet, which is not the whole point of pressing flours. So you want to make sure they're completely dry once you bind them together. And you want to wait I would say about a week until they are completely fully dry. You can always check on the flours and feel them to the touch, and if they're still moist, you definitely need to leave them in longer. It was the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you now know how to press flours. Thank you.
Now, the one thing that you never want to do is to end the speech with a blank screen other than your webcam. Let's go back, as we've been doing, to the last 90 seconds. And check this out. I will say, my experience has been when someone sends me a presentation and it's not full screen and it's a little bit blurry, my experience has been in the past that it was sent from a phone rather than from a laptop or a desktop. So for all of you, please make certain that when you are putting something like this together, double check to make certain that you're not sending it from your phone. That may not be the case here, but during the pandemic, that was going on. And that's why on many occasions, we're getting something that, again, is not full screen and is a little bit blurry. No closed captioning on this, very similar to what Chloe's been doing so far, but pay particular attention to her eye contact, complete sentence structure, and the design consistency of her slides.
There are flowers on top of the newspaper or printer paper. I suggest you take the time to really just spread them out, make them look very nice, because once you put the other hard surface on top of it, it's kind of like solidified. So you want to make sure that it's the design you like and it looks the way that you want it to look before you move on to the next step. And the fourth step is basically to find something to bind these two hard surfaces together and wait for the flour to completely dry. So if you're using just a regular flour press, you would usually have a cloth terry straps that will hold this in place, and it's for a lot of flours. But if you're using a book, you can just place more books on top of each other to get that binding effect. And then in this picture, they're using a little twisted screw method, which it's really interesting. So either one will work, just making sure that your flours are completely dry is the main point of this, because they will get moldy if they are not, and they will probably stay wet, which is not the whole point of pressing flours. So you want to make sure they're completely dry once you bind them together. And you want to wait I would say about a week until they are completely fully dry. You can always check on the flours and feel them to the touch, and if they're still moist, you definitely need to leave them in longer. It was the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you now know how to press flours. Thank you.
You'll notice there in the last 5 to 6 seconds of the speech, it just goes black. So when you're wrapping up the presentation, either have a generic thank you or just leave it here. You should never wrap up a speech like, oh, you did have the end, just leave it on. But there, always have something behind you. It looks a little bit empty otherwise. I do like the way that she approaches the topic. It's unique and it's demonstrative. The design consistency is there. We'll check that out in just a moment. Regarding the delivery, I did hear a couple of likes and I did hear a couple of kindas. Let's check out her slides, including the fourth step on binding the surfaces. We'll get back to her eye contact. The third step, dusting dirt off the flour. The second step, and then back to the first step, quote, the first step is to go outside and decide which flour to pick. It's a little bit blurry on my screen, so I'm guessing on Class Collaborate Ultra, it's going to be the same way. Like I said, if this was sent from a phone, you don't want to do that in the future. And there is her title slide. So it comes across very well. I just wish it was full screen. Let's mute the audio, and just on the bottom part of the screen where her webcam is, pay particular attention. The time will go off the screen here. Look closely at her eyes. Is she being extemporaneous? Keep in mind, this is the first speech. She is looking in the direction of the webcam. Her slides obviously are directly in front of her. Couple of issues with grammar, but those will be eliminated in time. Certainly a nice start to the semester. I just wish that you'd had the correct address all the way through, but sometimes those things happen. Because she was sending me more than one speech at once. We just saw her demonstrative speech, and for the record, now we will put her informative speech on the screen and play that as well. It comes across a little bit more clear.
Hi, my name is Kerrigan Hall, and for my informative speech, I will be doing the components of an animal cell. And mainly in this speech, I'm going to be focusing on the main functions that you can find within each component of the animal cell and some of the moving parts and how they work a little bit together to create each function. Okay, so the first main component is the nucleus. The main function of the nucleus is to store the cell's DNA and regulate transcription and to control cell division. Now, the nucleus has a lot of different parts inside of it in itself. So it has a nuclear envelope with nuclear pores on it, it has a nucleolus, it has a nuclear lamina, and it has all of these different things helping it to achieve all of these different functions that you see. So, for example, the nuclear pores could be used to regulate transcription. So yeah, that is it. Okay, so for the second component, it would have to be ribosomes. Okay, so the second component are ribosomes. The main function of the ribosome is to produce new proteins, assemble amino acids, and produce mRNA. Ribosomes are typically made out of Ribosomes are typically made out of RNA and large proteins, and usually you can find them just floating in the cytoplasm, just waiting to basically do the main functions that I just listed. And yeah, that's all they do. Okay, so the third component would have to be the mitochondria. The main function of the mitochondria is to produce ATP, or energy, you can also say that, storing calcium and heat production. Now, the mitochondria is very special in its own way. It has its own DNA, its double membrane organelle. It is also very important for creating the energy in the body, which is why, it's called the powerhouse of the cell. Okay, so the fourth main component would have to be the plasma membrane. The main function of the plasma membrane is to regulate transport of materials entering the cell. So because of its double phosphate layer membrane, it helps repel certain objects and substances out of the cell, which is really necessary for the cell to live. Say if anything can get in the cell, that wouldn't be good. It can mess up the DNA within the cell, and we just don't want that. So plasma membrane is super important for protection, and we definitely need it in our cells for protection. Okay, so the fourth component would have to be the plasma membrane, and the main function of the plasma membrane is to regulate the transportation of materials entering the cell. So because of its phospholipid bilayer, it allows certain substances to enter the cell, which is really important for protection, because if anything can get into the cell, anything can be in contact with DNA, which we do not want. So it's very important for that part of the cell. Very much good protection for the cell, and getting the things that we need into the cell and keeping the things that we don't want in the cell out of the cell. Okay, so the fifth component would be the lysosomes. The main function of a lysosome is to break down or digest large molecules in the cell. So say there's some mRNA that has already been used and we don't need anymore, a lysosome will come by and digest it and break it down so that we don't have to worry about foreign objects just floating inside the cell. So also another good way of protecting DNA that something foreign could get in the cell that we don't want. A lysosome would also be doing that, or just getting rid of just random debris that you could find in the cell. The lysosome would be doing that as well. Okay, so the fifth component would Okay, so the sixth main component of an animal cell would have to be the endoplasmic reticulum. The main function of the endoplasmic reticulum is protein synthesis, protein folding, and calcium storage, and also like lipid storage as well. Now, the endoplasmic reticulum is divided between the smooth and the rough ER, usually what people call it, and those are both doing different functions as well to help with all the main functions that you see on the screen. So yeah, those are the two main components of the ER. And that is the end of my presentation. I hope that you learned a lot more about cell components, well, animal cell components, and I hope that that was very informative for you. Okay, that was the end of my presentation. I hope that you learned a lot about animal cells, and I hope that it was very informative for you. Thank you.
So you had two presentations from our speaker because of the email issues. Let's take a look at the last few seconds and see whether or not she is sending something to me off of her phone. That's what it looks like. I can't really tell, which would explain, as I indicated at the outset, why we're not getting it full screen. Interesting ideas that she brings up, however, on the subject. Last 90 seconds.
Don't need any more. A lysosome will come by and digest it and break it down so that we don't have to worry about foreign objects just floating inside the cell. So also another good way of protecting DNA that something foreign could get in the cell that we don't want. A lysosome would also be doing that, or just getting rid of just random debris that you could find in the cell. The lysosome would be doing that as well. Okay, so the fifth component would Okay, so the sixth main component of an animal cell would have to be the endoplasmic reticulum. The main function of the endoplasmic reticulum is protein synthesis, protein folding, and calcium storage, and also like lipid storage as well. Now, the endoplasmic reticulum is divided between the smooth and the rough ER, usually what people call it, and those are both doing different functions as well to help with all the main functions that you see on the screen. So yeah, those are the two main components of the ER. Okay, and that is the end of my presentation. I hope that you learned a lot more about cell components, well, animal cell components, and I hope that that was very informative for you. Okay, that was the end of my presentation. I hope that you learned a lot about animal cells, and I hope that it was very informative for you. Thank you.
An overall nice look to her slides, very professional. Little hiccup there at the end with that visual right there. Sometimes that happens. Let's take a look at some of her visuals from back to front with the endoplasmic reticulum. She described that well and defined lysosomes, plasma membrane, pretty consistent eye contact, mitochondria,
Yeah.
ribosomes,
It has a nucleolus, it has a nuclear lamina.
nucleus, and the components of a cell. From this point, we will mute the audio, play it. The time on the bottom in this video format eventually disappears. Pay particular attention to her eye contact. Probably the one thing I would do in her case is to get rid of some of this dead space on top so we can see her more clearly, and also double check for future presentations to ensure that the slides are widescreen. It sure looks like she's sending it from her phone, which would make us realize why it's not full screen. A couple of minor issues with vocalics or grammar, but nothing that really calls attention to itself. And that is her title slide for the leftover informative speech, the components of an animal cell. So you saw her demonstrative speech on how to press flowers, followed by the informative speech, the components of an animal cell. Before we wrap things up for the day, I wanted to show you an email that I received during class from the registrar. I told you at the beginning that in the past, we would have grades usually due during the fall, during the spring, during the summer, the following Monday after the last day of class. The 4th of July holiday break has changed things a lot in your favor. Received during our recording session from the registrar's office, you can see right here where I have the cursor. The deadline for submitting final grades for this term will be 10 a.m. on Wednesday, July 5th, which is actually 1 week from today. There are a couple of you who are moving on to another university, and you may have gotten behind with an assignment or you sent it to the wrong email address. That will give you an opportunity to double check everything. I will share this again at the beginning of class tomorrow. So again, 10 a.m. Wednesday, July 5th will be the official day when grades are due. That gives all of you an opportunity to double check for each of the 4 speeches, and also double check to make certain that you've sent it to me, that in your outgoing email you can see it and you can hear it. For those of you who are still thinking about topics, let's go to my YouTube channel. I already have it in the playlist. I put this up at the end of class yesterday. On the playlist for radio, TV, speech, and media materials, starting at the top with how to make great coffee, you have a number of presentations that are representative of wildcard speeches. You've noticed from our presenters today how each of them have improved over a relatively short period of time. We began with the evolution of The Sims 4 from Abriana. We transitioned into Life as an Institution from Autumn, and then we moved on to the Dennis Rader presentation on a serial killer from Ms. Henderson. But these are certainly representative of all different kinds of wildcard ideas that you might be interested in. Now, one more time, the student preview mode of Blackboard, I have it right now in the course syllabus area and at course itinerary. For your benefit, tomorrow, the final day, is wildcard speech day 2. Also, you don't necessarily have to have it completed, guys, on the 29th, but the self-evaluation speech critique that I showed you at the beginning of class today from Abriana is representative of what you might want to look at. Also, at course syllabus, you go to the course speech schedule. Those of you who are on day 1 or day 2, we're really up against it now because tomorrow is the final class session. And as much as possible, I want to show your presentations during class tomorrow. So make certain that as much as possible, you're watching all of these course videos and paying attention to what I want you to do, which brings us one more time to Class Collaborate Ultra. At the menu, at the recordings, what we have today, session 18, wildcard speech day 1, will be listed right here. Anything else that you would like to look at on either panel, which is panel 2, sessions 1 through 7, and Panel 1, sessions 8 through 17. What we're doing right now is going to be online probably in about 20 minutes or so. Make certain that you stay on track with all of your projects. As we conclude today's class, we've had a couple of internet issues, so when you watch today's class video on Ultra, it's going to be a little bit herky-jerky, primarily because of some of the issues that we had with being able to upload data. If you watch this on YouTube, it will be very smooth, as if those issues did not happen. If that sounds familiar, it is similar to what goes on with all of your preparations for each of the 4 presentations in here. When you are putting together a demonstrative, an informative, or persuasive, or a wild card speech, it's never going to be perfect. Ideally, in an online class, whenever you hit the enter button, that will be the case. But for all of you, be proactive. We end tomorrow. You are catching a huge break with the 4th of July holiday, in that if there is an issue with a presentation, or if there's an issue with a self-evaluation speech critique, there's a little bit of extra time, 1 week from today. But don't wait. Stay in contact with me, ideally through either my SAU email address or my Yahoo email address. Be very proactive when it comes to accessing data on Blackboard and Class Collaborate Ultra, because as I told you today, these 19 class sessions go by very quickly. It's hard to believe that we are almost at the end of the term. Good luck with preparing your presentations for day 2, the final day of wildcard speeches, and also for your self-evaluation speech critiques. As for SPCH 1113, Introduction to Public Speaking, for the first summer session of 2023, that concludes the recording session for today.